Let's jump right into this explainer. I want to give a massive warm welcome to all the young believers joining us today. As we navigate our faith, our careers, our relationships, there's this one fundamental concept about how God operates that we absolutely have to get right. It actually starts with a pretty simple saying you've probably heard before. When you pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud too. Now, usually when people hear that, they roll their eyes, right? I mean, we want the rain, we want the blessing, and we definitely want the beautiful rainbow after it. But today, we're going to completely shift how we view God's blessings. We are going to look at that mud, not as some annoying nuisance, but as the actual purpose of the rain itself.
Just think about it for a second. After a really heavy rainstorm, what do little kids do? They run outside and they gladly jump right into those muddy puddles. They literally lean into the mess. But adults? We avoid it like the plague, right? We tiptoe around the puddles so we don't ruin our nice shoes. See, in the secular view, we've been totally conditioned to expect this motivational, feel-good rainbow every single time something good happens. But the believer's view, it requires a massive perspective shift. The mud is not an accident. It's an indicator of divine purpose. We really need to challenge this whole feel-good expectation that blessings are just always clean and easy and comfortable. Because if mud puddles are the undeniable sign that the rain actually fell, well, then we need to ask ourselves, do we even know what God wants us to do when the blessings actually arrive?
And honestly, that brings us to the core premise of our entire explainer today. It's captured perfectly in this quote, and I really want you all to let this sink in. We have to stop viewing our blessings as these isolated, wow, God has finally heard me moments. Whether it's that new job, a financial breakthrough, maybe a new relationship, God is not wasteful. He is deeply intentional when he distributes resources. He expects fruitfulness. The blessing is the rain, absolutely, but the reason God moved, his actual assignment for you, you're going to find that in the mud. The responsibility, the hard work, the stewardship that follows the blessing, that is the real reason it was given to you in the first place.
Now, to prove this isn't just some catchy metaphor, let's quickly look at the scriptural record in this next section. The cloud of witnesses, God's methodology of blessing and testing.
Just look at this incredible list. Honestly, this should completely shatter the myth that a blessing means a life with no responsibilities. Abraham was blessed with his miracle son Isaac, and then immediately tested with that very same blessing. Hannah literally wept for a child, was finally blessed with Samuel, and her immediate response was the muddy work of giving him right back to the Lord's house. Samson was blessed with supernatural strength, but that strength peaked in the ultimate sacrifice at his death. And think about Peter. He experiences this miraculous boat-sinking catch of fish, literally a massive financial blessing. And what does he do? He abandons that exact livelihood for a life of earthly hardship and persecution just to follow Christ. And David, anointed for the throne, the ultimate promotion, only to be sent straight into the wilderness for years. God definitely elevates his people, for sure, but he sets them apart for his own purpose. A resourceful king makes sure absolutely nothing goes to waste.
So, while all those examples are incredibly powerful, there is one specific story that perfectly anchors this theology. Let's look at Joseph's muddy puddles, the anchor story.
Let's map out how this builds across the timeline of his life. Joseph goes through these really distinct seasons. First up, Potiphar's house. He's blessed with incredible favor and leadership, but it ends in a false accusation. Talk about major mud. And that lands him right in season 2, prison. But even there, notice what happens. He takes on a leadership role under the captain of the prison guard. It is a muddy, incredibly difficult assignment. But here's the critical revelation, okay? If Joseph had refused to do that muddy work in the prison, his blessing of leadership would have permanently ended back in Potiphar's house. It was in that prison where he interpreted the chief butler's dream. That specific mud puddle was the exact stepping stone he needed to get to season 3, the palace. Literally none of these blessings or hardships were isolated events.
And that intense preparation in the mud, that's exactly what equipped Joseph for his ultimate assignment. So, in the palace, Pharaoh has these 2 dreams that communicate one terrifying message. 7 years of massive agricultural abundance, followed directly by 7 years of severe, devastating famine. But because Joseph had learned how to steward resources in the dark, he correctly interpreted this dual message. He knew that the coming rain, those 7 years of abundance, wasn't just for a giant 7-year party. No, the blessing had a profound, life-saving purpose.
So, what does he do? Joseph enacts a massive visual sanction, the 20% rule, 1/5. He tells Pharaoh that during the years of abundant blessing, they absolutely must aggressively store up 1/5 of the produce. Why? So that the years of plenty wouldn't just evaporate overnight. And guys, this wasn't just good economics, this was divine stewardship. He was setting up a system to ensure that the blessing of the rain could actually survive the drought that was inevitably coming.
Now, what's really fascinating about this specific, honestly kind of terrifying imagery is how it describes what happens if we fail to steward our blessings. Genesis 41 describes these ugly, gaunt cows eating the fat cows. And the text actually says, when they had eaten them up, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were just as ugly as at the beginning. Just think about that for a second. If you receive a massive blessing, maybe a huge financial windfall, a great relationship, a really powerful ministry, but you do not have the understanding to manage it, the famine's going to eat it up, and your life will look just as ugly and barren as if God had never blessed you in the first place. Because without management, resources simply vanish.
And that brings us to a non-negotiable core doctrine for us as young believers. Proverbs 4:7 lays it out so clearly. The blessing of abundance means absolutely nothing without understanding. Seriously, you can pray for an abundance of resources all day long, but if you don't pray for the wisdom to manage them, you are literally setting yourself up for failure. Understanding is so much more important than the initial blessing itself. Notice that Joseph didn't just tell Pharaoh what the dream meant. He explicitly told Pharaoh to select a discerning and wise man. He pointed to wisdom as the single solution to the impending crisis. So how do we actually practically apply this to our daily lives? Let's move to our next section, stewarding the field, the cost of housing the blessing.
Jesus actually tells this one-verse parable in Matthew chapter 13 that captures this perfectly. He says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a man who found a treasure hidden in a field. And in his joy, he goes out and sells absolutely all he has just to buy that field." Now, I want to pose a direct question to you right now. If the treasure is the actual blessing, the thing of immense value, why did the man need to buy the entire giant field with everything he had? Why not just grab the treasure and run?
Well, the crucial point is this. Blessings do not come stand alone. You cannot just extract a shiny treasure and leave all the dirt behind. The field is the mud. Stewardship literally means buying the entire field of accountability so you can appropriately house the treasure of God's blessing. That man recognized that to keep the treasure, he had to take on the responsibility of the entire property. Receiving the rain of God's blessing means you must step up to handle all the mud-like accountabilities that come right along with it. You want the blessing of a great marriage? Well, you have to buy the field of compromise, communication, and sacrifice. You want the blessing of career success? You've got to buy the field of integrity, long hours, and heavy leadership burdens.
And that brilliantly illustrates our final takeaway. As we wrap up this explainer, I want you to look at this final question. The Lord freely gives, and the Lord freely takes. That is a fundamental law of life. Blessings are going to come, and seasons are going to change. The rain will fall, and the mud will inevitably form. But when the dust finally settles on your life, the sheer amount of resources you accumulated, that won't be the final measure of your faith. The real question will be, in all you're receiving, did you gain wisdom? Did you understand the true purpose of the rain, and were you willing to stand in the mud to see God's will accomplished? So my challenge to you today is this: prioritize wisdom over raw resources, and just watch how God transforms your life.